Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series. Mark Gilbert again with you. Great to be back with you. It's been a little bit of a while. I was actually scheduled to lead one of these last month in November and came down suddenly with an illness, and I had to reach out. And I just want to thank Reverend Robert Brzezinski for covering for me that day. I just had to get a hold of him at the last minute and say, that I could not do the program, even though I'd done all the prep work, et cetera, for it. But it's great to be back with you today. And just a quick note for all of you who are joining us, as we always ask you to do when you first come on, please, in the chat field, wherever you're watching, like if you're watching on Facebook or something, just drop a comment. Give me your name and where you are. We'll acknowledge you in just a few minutes. I just want to set the stage for today, though, just to let you know what we're going to be doing. And if you've been following the series, you know that every year we start off in January looking at the Science of Mind textbook, the 1938 book by Ernest Holmes, and we go through it chapter by chapter, leading discussions around the content of the book. That usually takes us up into sometime in August, and from there we've been flipping gears the last couple of years to look at content from the Science of Mind archives. I'll be putting their website up on the screen in a little while, but right now just know that all the content we've been looking at is available through the Science of Mind archives. And today is no different. Today we're going to be looking at an article from the February 1963 issue by a person by the name of A. Graham Ikin, and the title of the article is The Finite and the Infinite, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But so the what I want to just again reiterate is, if you're joining me, go ahead and put your name and where you are in the chat field, and I will be bringing it up and acknowledging you in just a moment or two. But I want to let you know that what we're going to do is I'm going to speak for just a few minutes about the what do we mean by the finite and the infinite, and that is our title for today, and essentially what we can consider is, what do we mean by the finite and what do we mean by the infinite? And I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about that. And again, after we do that, I want to get into the magazine article. We'll go through some of the quotes. I'll tell you how to get a hold of the article. I will elaborate and comment on that. And as things are, I'm discussing things, if a question comes up for you, I'd like you to post it in the comments. Be sure to put a question out there for me, just to let me know what's on your mind as what we're going through this content. And the other thing is that I'm going to come back at the end and actually share a very similar article from Ernest Holmes and some quotes from him. That's Science of Mind. It wouldn't be totally complete if we didn't have a little bit of Ernest in this. So that's the degree where we're going this morning. And let's see. Hey, Shay, great to see you here today. You say you missed me. Yeah, I missed you guys too. I would have liked to have been with you. One good news is we are continuing next year with another year of this series, and we'll start back in January. And we will, and I have let the network know that I want to be one of the rotational speakers for next year as well. I enjoy doing this program. Hey, Wayne, good to see you. Always great to have you here. And so we will, and you're asking a question, what helps critical mass develop? I don't know if we'll come back to that. We'll look and see. That's an interesting question, but if it relates to our topics today in some way, I'll try to come back to that question. But anyway, what we want to look at today is the finite and the infinite. Let me just finish out my other thought. We will be coming back with a series next year. We will start in January looking at the Science of Mind textbook again. We will be going through the book, and again, we'll decide next year, probably we'll do a very similar thing in taking content from the archives at the end of the year. But just know that we're going to circle back in January and start looking at the Science of Mind textbook again. So anyway, again, if you're joining me in, be sure to put your name and where you are. And I see Fiona from Geneva, Switzerland. Great to see you here, Fiona. Always blessed that you are here with us. Okay. That said, let's dive into just a little bit of a background by what do we mean by the finite and the infinite. And to that degree, I put a graphic on the screen which you can look at, and what I want you to consider is that we live in two worlds at the same time. We live in the world of the physical, the world of the material, the world of stuff. The physical world. As you look around this screen here, you can see books behind me in my chair, my glasses, my face, me. All of that is just in the world of form. It's in the world of the finite. And by finite, we mean it's not infinite, that we can place a boundary around it, a limit around it. We in our consciousness see a boundary between where I end and my chair begins, and where I end and you begin, and where you end and your computer begins. When we consider that, we see ourselves when we're in the world of form, in the world of the material, as these physical objects that are limited in size and scope. And so that's what we mean by the finite. But on the flip side is the infinite. And when we consider the infinite, what we're talking about is something that has no boundaries, something that has no limits. It's hard for us sometimes to wrap our conscious mind around, but we're talking about something that continues in every dimension, in every direction, for all time and for non-time. It is a totality of all that is everywhere that we can even imagine, and even beyond our imagination. That is the infinite. And so we have these two extremes. We have this extreme of this nebulous thing out there that is the infinite, that continues on forever and ever, and is just all everywhere. It encompasses all. And then we have this sense of things being in chunks or sizes or limitations. And so that's what we mean, is this finite versus the infinite, the finite versus the infinite. And so if you look at the screen there, you'll notice a couple of things I want you to see. And I'm going to bring that up into a little bigger form so you can see it maybe a little bit better. You'll notice that there's an arrow going across the top. And what I want you to consider is that this is not an either or kind of thing, that when we move from the finite to the infinite, that we actually can move up the scale. It's like a sliding scale, or you can imagine it like the two poles of a magnet, where on one end it's the negative, and one other end is the positive. But you can't have the positive without the negative, and then you can't have the negative without the positive. So the things on the two sides of the sliding scale really relate to one another. And so when we talk about the infinite, for the infinite truly to know itself, it has to have aspects of itself that see itself in the finite limitations. You have to have parts of it that are experiencing the finite world. And so things on the left-hand side of your screen under the finite are all representations of this material world in which we live. And a comparable term to that is on the right-hand side of the screen. So just going down, when we talk about the relative world, it's the same as in the finite world. Things are in relation to one another. So not only am I a finite being where I see a boundary ending on myself, but I see myself in relation to things, that I'm in relationship to you, I'm in relationship to the objects in my room, all of the people, animals, sentient beings on the planet, that everything in my sphere of the material is in relation to another aspect of it. But if I go up the scale to the other end, there is no relative nature. It's absolute. It's total absolute. There is the all-encompassing of all it is. Similarly, we can look at the concepts of multiplicity and unity. You often hear the term in New Thought that we are the multiplicity within the unity. What we're representing there is the same terms, that the unity is the all, the everything, but the multiplicity is us, or every expression of the one within the unity. But again, it's a sliding scale. It's not an either or. We can move upwards towards unity from the multiplicity. I'll come back to that in a second. And then you can look at body and form. We say we have forms, we have bodies, yet on the other end is from body is our spirit, or the formless. That there are these aspects that transcend the physical form. We often, in using the famous term by Teilhard de Chardin, he says we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So on the other consideration is that in the world of the all, in the realm of the all, our true nature is our spiritual beingness, but we're moving through the material world as a human being, and we're having these human experiences. Another end of the scale, on the one end, is while we're in the world of form, is we experience time. Things are chunked into a sequence where one thing follows another thing follows another thing, and we see these aspects of time Whereas in the all, or in the absolute, or in the infinite, there is no time. Everything transcends time. We always talk about it as the eternal now, but that is simply another way of reflecting there is no time in the timeless, in the unity, in the formless, in spirit. And finally, we could also talk about it in terms of matter or concreteness. That this is, like science likes to say, that everything is matter, everything in the physical world is matter, and that you can only explain things in terms of how matter interacts with matter. But on the other hand, quantum physics shows us that what we think is matter really is the collapsing of a potential. So on the other end of the scale is a vast, all-encompassing, full potentiality of the possibilities of what can be made into physical matter. So things are, as they collapse from potentiality into matter, they become into the world of form. They come into the world of time. They come into the world of multiplicity and all of the things that are on the left-hand side of your screen. So what we're trying to get you to see is that there is this on one end, or is this world and all its experiences, this multiplicity and time and a sense of being separate and apart from one another. And on the other end of a scale is a sense of where all of that's transcended. And that's where our truth is. That's where our ultimate truth is. But each side of the scale depends on the other. That for us to truly know ourselves as a spiritual being, we must go through the human experience. To go through the understand the timeless, we have to go through the sense of time. To go through truly understanding spirit, we have to move through the experience of form and the body. So all of the stuff on the left-hand side is the experience we're moving through, but it helps us come back to and truly know the other side. What we're doing is moving essentially on the hero's journey, or a spiritual journey, where we came from the all, the completeness, the infinite, and we're moving through the finite and having our experiences so that we can return back to the infinite and know the infinite at a higher level than we knew when we left. So the story of the prodigal son, or the hero's journey, all of those are mythical tales, and that simply are trying to get at the truth of the path that we're on. So that's some aspects of it. I dropped a few things on. Linda, good to see you here. Good Saturday morning. I'm glad that you're with us as well. And Linda says that this ties into the concept in Science of Mind that we're metaphysicians in our practice. That truly is, that we are metaphysicians, that we are looking at the metaphysical, that we are moving towards that which is beyond the physical. So metaphysical means in that concept that beyond the physical, and that's truly where we're going, is beyond the physical, the left-hand side of the screen, into the non-physical. And Shay says it's the concept of heaven and earth. Exactly. You could add on the left-hand side that the earth and the physical experience that we're having here is tied into the aspect of heaven, which transcends this. We can look at it from a lot of ways. If you're familiar with and many forms of energy work, they talk about the fact that we experience life in bodies, and that these bodies become a physical body, an emotional body, a mental body, a spiritual body, that there's this aspect of stepping upward. If we look at the tree of life and the Kabbalah, all it starts at the top of the tree in the all, or beyond the physical, but it drops down into the lowest realm of the tree of life in the world of form, and that the path is moving up the paths of the tree of life to return back to our source. So this whole story is enacting in so many different ways. And one other point that I want to make with this is that we talk about this stuff on the left-hand side, the world, this physical world that we're in. We talk about it in factual language. I'm reading this interesting book that let me just hold it up for you for a second. It's a book by Alan Watts called The Two Hands of God, The Myths of Polarity. And what he's getting at is when we look at that arrow across there, and that the world of form and the world of spirit are actually in a polarity, that they can't exist without the other, that the other helps define the other, that we're moving up in a vibratory level whenever we can shift towards the other side. And in fact, every day we move in our consciousness between the world of form and the world of spirit. When we're in meditation, we're doing a spiritual mind treatment, we're doing anything that taps into a greater sense of the allness of life, we're moving in our consciousness to the right-hand side of that chart towards the all, or spirit. But when we're, making, obscene gestures to somebody who cut us off in traffic, and we feel ourselves as different, or we get sucked into the news, we're far way over into the world of matter. And so we can shift in our consciousness each moment along that scale. And the same thing is, as we move and become more aware of the nature of ourselves, when we become aware that we're more than the physical body, that we also have an emotional, mental, and spiritual body, the more that we can encompass that into our awareness, the more we're moving towards the left-hand side, the right-hand side, rather, the more we're moving home back into spirit. And so that's the goal. The goal is to move that way, but we also have to live in the world of form at the same time. And so that's the great challenge for us, is that it's not an either or. We're not trying to become so spiritual that we let behind the world of the form, and we're not trying to ignore that there is a world beyond the world of form, that there is truly a world of spirit. And it's trying to encompass and bring these both into our life, live in our truth in the non-material, and bring that truth into our lives in the physical. And that's truly the nature of what Science of Mind is about, is that whole aspect of learning to think and understand our creative path. I did want to finish one final thought about this book on Alan Watts before I jump into the today's article. What Watts talks about is that we have two ways of languaging these worlds. That we have our scientific factual language when we talk about this material world. And in fact, if people think that all stuff is only matter, they think you're kind of woo-woo if you talk about it in other kind of language. But the language he talks about in this book is the language of myth. In fact, his whole book is a study in the mythologies of the world and how our ancient cultures developed myths to talk about that world of the all, the world of the spirit, things that are so hard to talk about in everyday factual language. So when we have factual language, we're talking about what we see and can relate and experience and all agree upon in the world of form. But when we transcend and get into the world of the all and the non-material and its nebulous nature and its all-encompassing nature, words start failing us. They have limitations. It's like the old saying, it's not if the moon is spirit and we talk about the finger pointing at the moon, that's all we can really do, because we can't really encompass in our language what the moon means. So we're always talking about spirit, but can never really capture it in our language. So to that degree, myths serve a great purpose. They serve trying to use in story and mythological stories the aspect of explaining things that are beyond explainable in human factual language. There's a great author I love and met and interviewed him once for a podcast I did for another organization many years ago. His name is Michael Dowd. He wrote a book called the Evolution of God, and it's about the evolution of our understanding of God, going from the old man in the sky to understanding God as the spirit that's embedded in everything, the panentheistic version of God. And what Dowd said is that he called it daytime language and nighttime language. And it's the same thing Watts is talking about with factual language and mythological language, that we have language that addresses the physical material side. And then we have that language that is mystical in nature and tries to get at that nebulous nature of the non-physical. Yes. So to that degree, Shay says, I find this polarity to manifest when I do affirming, the opposite comes up to be healed. And it's true, because a lot of times when we are, we have to acknowledge the light and the dark go together. We have to acknowledge that sometimes the experience of the negative leads us to the experience of the positive. We can, and it's almost a cliche in New Thought circles, but we have to recognize that if we look back over our lives, anything that was very negative in our lives, be it divorce, death, loss of a job, things that in the world of form that are very negative for us in that moment and cause a lot of pain and sorrow, that pain and sorrow and the experience of that leads us to something greater, that there's always a gift that's in the negativity. And so we begin to see, things that appear to be totally negative have a positive nature to them, And I just want to hold this thought, that as you think about anything that appears to be negative, There's a positive aspect to it. Anytime you divide something into either or, if you try to put things into two sides and make and say these are polar opposites, what I want you to hold lightly is that idea that they're totally separate and complete apart from one another. That there's actually a sliding scale connection where you can move and shift and start to see that one builds and is connected to the other. And the more you can do that, the more it feeds your wisdom and on the spiritual path. The more you are really becoming aware of the great aspect of the interconnectedness of all that is. All right, let's continue on. I want to get into the Science of Mind article. I'm about 22 minutes into the program, having gotten to it, and it's got some great content in it. Let me quickly show you the cover of the February 1963 issue of Science of Mind. This is the issue from which I am taking the article from. The article we're looking at is called The Finite and the Infinite. And you can see down in the small print on the left-hand side of the column there that it's written by a person named A. Graham Ikin, well known in England for her psychoanalytic work and her metaphysical writings. Among her recent books are Bridges of Understanding and Bay Windows into Eternity. And a little thing about Alice, her name is Alice Graham Ikin. You can go search her out on Google if you want, and you'll actually find some links to some of her books that are available for sale or out of print. She was born in 1895, died in 1974. As it says there, was in the UK and was a psychotherapist. But a lot of her books and a lot of her writings are really about the bringing together of science and spirituality. That she's really recognizing that, yes, there's value in the science world. And the science, of course, is really looking at the left-hand column, the finite world. Science is really measuring and describing in factual language what is going on in the world. Now, this particular article, before I read it, let me just give you a couple of bits about this. It's from this issue, February 63. And if you'd like to get a copy of it, here's how you can do that. You can go to the scienceofmindarchives.com, and you see the website on the screen there, and search in the search field on the website for Science of Mind February 63. It'll bring up the copy. If you're a subscriber to the archives or a friend of the archives, that is paying either an annual or monthly fee, you get 20 downloads a month from them, so it would be free for you. Otherwise, you can purchase that issue a la carte, even if you're not a member, and your purchase, either with your subscription or purchasing an a la carte, helps support the archives and its work to protect the documents of Science of Mind and our history for us. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to go to the Science of Mind archives and be sure and support them. And let's get into this article. I want to read a little bit. I don't want to read the whole article to you, but I do want to read some of the content that is on this first page. I think it's got some beautiful stuff. So we're just going to start in it, and let me just read now. I'll stop with some comments. She says, a traveler who had lost his way arrived in a village which had several crossroads going through it. He asked a village boy where first one and then another road went, and the lad said, I don't know where those roads go to, but I'm not lost. I live here. Then she goes on from there and says, in life, we're sometimes faced with roads that seemingly open out in all directions, but with no signpost to say where they lead. Whenever we try to make a cross-section of reality, whether in physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, or any other discipline, through which we seek to understand and master our environment, we come to some laws so all-pervading that the nature of the whole universe is needed to contain them. I want to stop there for a second. And I talk about this a lot in my classes, is the fact that when we start questioning the material world, well, anybody really does this. Any child born onto the planet starts developing a map, a mental map, a worldview about how the world acts. They understand that if I do A, B is going to happen and that kind of thing. And they start making a map about how the world actually exists. And ultimately, our maps change as we keep testing it against the reality out there. But the reality is also inside us. And we start recognizing that when we map it all out and we think everything is stuff out there, we start finding some limits to it. We find that things that are in our inner awareness question our maps of what we see on the outside world. And that's what she's saying really in this beginning to this article, is that we try to take a cross section of reality. Whenever we try to make our maps, it's based on whatever our experiences are and what people tell us and the cultural stories that we have about what is the meaning of life and how life works. And when we make this cross section, we start bumping into some laws that transcend what we've been told and what we've thought we've learned, and it starts opening us to questions of us. It's like if for many of us, we went through a phase in our lives where we thought everything was physical matter, and at some point you said, it can't be totally true. There's little things that pop up like parapsychological experiences or any kind of mystical experience that we have, where it senses that there's more to life than just physical stuff, and it makes us question that reality. And then that pushes us into recognizing the value of science, but also recognizing there's another world, there's this greater world that transcends it. And then that helps start changing our map. Let me continue on with the reading here. She says, we find each cross section reaches out into infinity, beyond the range of our vision, not yet exhausted or terminated. Since this happens whenever we seek to go beyond first appearances, we find ourselves centered in the infinite ways of the cosmos or the universe. Surrounded by the unknown, however far we extend the boundaries of the known, we can either panic and feel lost within such immensities, or like the village lad, we can say, I don't know the end of any of these infinite dimensions. I don't know where they're leading to, but I'm not lost. I live here. So it's acknowledging that we can get overwhelmed by the fact that the infinite universe and all the experiences are so grand and glorious that they transcend anything that we can limit. I like to put it here in another way, and that's that the more I learn and the more I study and the more I have aha experiences and understand what I think how life works, every time I get an aha about how life works, I also have an opening to the fact how little I know. It's like everything that feeds my wisdom also opens me to the greater wisdom that there is an infinite knowledge out there that transcends anything that I can ever, while I am in this body as Mark Gilbert, ever really understand totally. So it humbles you in a way. The more wise you get to recognize that the growth in your wisdom leads you to the wisdom that there's more than you will ever know. Here's a key point at the bottom of this page. And again, I'm not going to read the entire article to you, but it says here at the center of infinitude is the finite focus of consciousness that can envisage a whole universe beyond and yet be at home as a finite participator. Since we live in it and share in its fundamental nature, finite and infinite, it continues on the next page, are correlative terms. Neither has any meaning apart from the other. What she's saying there is we come to a recognition that we live in this infinitude as a finite being, that we're living in both scales. And we have to truly roll that into our awareness, roll that into our lives, roll that into an aspect of it. Yes, it's both and, as Shay says. It's yes, white light in the cosmos, Wayne. There are all these aspects and ways in which we can define this, is that we are this finite being right here in this physical world, but we transcend it. And we have to live with that recognition. I often call it a dynamic tension. We have to live between the two spaces. And that's what our goal is to move in that aspect of knowing both simultaneously. So let me flip back and we're going to look at the article, the next page. And okay, as we continue on, if you hopefully you can read this on the screen. Mark stops and has a cup of coffee here. Lori writes, "I love the dynamic tension." Yeah, it's it's one of these things where sometimes we don't, tension has a negative connotation. I think sometimes when I use that phrase, people go, oh, we don't want tension. And they think of it from an interpersonal standpoint, that you get in a conversation and you feel emotional tension and it's uncomfortable for us. And although that is really an aspect of it too, what I'm really talking about is when we get that inner tension between trying to hold two seemingly opposite ideas in our mind at the same time. That I'm a spiritual being united to all that is, but I'm also this individual who's interacting with you. It's two different ideas. And there's so much of life that we have a tension between the moral choices to be a good person in the physical life, and sometimes the tension when we get sucked into form and competition and sometimes don't act in a morally way. There's always these tensions going on in our relationship. Anyway, first column there on the left-hand side, about halfway down here, she writes, if we cling to our finiteness, again, that's our being a sense in this world, our everyday lives, for fear of the impact of that which goes beyond us, we discover we're lost. We can find no firm ground beneath our feet. We find nothing that does not slip away into what seems to be an illusion, nothing by which to guide those same daily lives that does not seem to lead us astray like a will o' the wisp. She's really getting at there this concept of that we have to not cling to our finiteness, our humanness, our everyday lives, but we have to acknowledge that it is a part of who we are. On the next column over there, she writes, if we are rightly in tune with the infinite. In tune with the infinite, by the way, it's a famous phrase that comes from there was a book written by Ralph Waldo Trine. It was a bestseller, sold millions of copies back in the late 1890s, early 1900s. And Trine became a famous author and magazine writer back at that time. But he wrote a book called In Tune with the Infinite, calling us into this experience of recognizing that we need to take what our physical lives are and move them into an awareness of the infinite, and then live in a way that is in tune or in harmony with. And in fact, when we talk about being in harmony with the universe or with Spirit's greatest good for us, what we're trying to do is to get our smallness out of the way and to recognize that there's like putting chords together in a song. You want them to play correctly, to be in harmony. And so we want our life to be lived in a way that allows the goodness of Spirit to roll into our lives. And so that's what, but if we rightly live in tune with the infinite, she writes, we find every aspect of daily life is enriched. We find a harmony of timing that at times seems almost miraculous. If you're a student of the Course in Miracles, that's what the miracles are. Is when we live in spirit, when we live in oneness, we live in that space of bringing things in tune, then these miracles show up in our lives. That's truly what we're trying to get at. We're trying to be in this sense of flow. The idea of flow is the same concept, is that we're getting our smallness out of the way and allowing our spiritual truths to just flow along that continuum into our lives, and that we slide effortlessly between the world of form and the world of spirit. We see and live in both worlds simultaneously. Let's jump ahead just a little bit and bring this back. In this particular one, this is the next page in the article. And I encourage you again to go get this article. Again, if you go to sciencemindarchives.com and search for the February 63 article, you're going to get a whole lot more when you get the magazine. This is just one part of the magazine. It's just one article. You got lots of other good stuff in there. But in this particular page, Ikin over on the left-hand side writes, overemphasis on all the resources of God, real though they can lead to our failure to fulfill our real responsibilities where and as we are. It can lead to an otherworldliness, which ignores the finite limits that are necessary for real activity in the world, through which the infinite fulfills its long-range plans through specific activities which are precisely relevant to the actual temporal and contingent circumstances. It can lead to a holier thou attitude, which cuts the line of communication between people and is essential for the free flow and expression of the Spirit common to us all. What is she saying there? She's basically saying that if you live in the world of spirit, if if you go live in a cave and meditate all the time, and you take yourself out of the real world, then you can develop a holier than thou attitude. You can live in a sense of ignoring the physical reality. You can't live in the world of spirit. If you try to do that continuously, what happens? You have to, at some point, have to take care of your bodily needs. I mean, you're meditating, but you're breathing, you're taking in air, you're eating, you have to, you have to go to the bathroom. There are things that are in the world of form. You can, but if you continuously try to deny the physical to live in that, it's denying your purpose for why you're here. You are here for some gift that you've been given to express, and you are denying spirit's gift to you if you try to totally live in spirit without also living in the world of form. So you've got to, again, come back to that dynamic tension to bring them both together in the same way. You can't live totally in spirit all of the time because it's not realistic, as she's saying. And secondly, because you're denying the gifts that you've been given to express in the world of form. So you don't want to live in spirit all the time, but do you want to live in form all the time? At the top of the next column, she says, on the other hand, to be so overwhelmed by our individual littleness in comparison with the whole human race or the universe that we are afraid of ourselves also cuts us off from that which is essential to our sanity. To run with a crowd in order to stifle the still small voice within us is to lose our chance of becoming true expressions of the infinite goodness of God, which fulfills us in the process of fulfilling its true nature in us. Wow. Wow. So you can't immerse yourself and just run with other people and take on what they say and live in this physical world either. You've got to anchor yourself in the spiritual world where you know your true gifts of spirit are coming to you. So you've got to find the right balance between the two. Okay. If you got a question about any of this, feel free to drop a note in the chat field. If there's a question relative to this, I'll pop it in and see if I can relate to it. But I'm hoping you're getting the sense of what we're talking about here. Is that, in a sense, we live in two worlds. We're spiritual beings. Our ultimate truth is in the world of spirit, the all, the stuff that was on the right-hand side of that chart a few minutes ago. But we're also in the world of form. We're also material, physical beings. And we can't negate the two. Our ultimate truth is in the world of spirit. But spirit is feeding us and has created us in the world of form for us to express ourselves in this world. And we have to acknowledge that both. Somebody asked Ernest Holmes one time, what's really real? He said, is this physical world real? And he says, it's real as form. And I love that answer because what he's acknowledging is that our real truth, our real with a capital R reality, is in the world of spirit. That's where we're ultimately are from and where we're returning to on this evolutionary journey that we're on. But this experience we're having is real in the world of form. This experience of being separate and apart from one another is real, and it's a gift to us. It's a gift. All the negative stuff and all the positive stuff, no matter how we see it in that moment and how we're experiencing it, the emotional aspects of our life are all a gift for us, and we have to find the right balance. Now, the article goes on from there. Some other great stuff in this article. Again, encourage you, to take a look at it. But I want to jump ahead and look at a little bit of the work of Ernest Holmes. And here is what I want to talk about. Those of you who know me know that earlier this year, the Science of Mind Archives published a book called Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, Lectures and Classes from the 1950s. And in that book, what we did was we compiled, and by we, I probably should say me, compiled all of the writings that Holmes did at Asilomar, these talks from Asilomar that we had, and compiled them into a book and did some research on it. We include some pictures from Holmes back at Asilomar. He would go to the conference center in California in the 1950s. And and he would speak to people who were religious scientists, people who already had the basics down. And he would come in and give deeper metaphysical talks. And in the book, we compiled all the talks. You get some There's an introduction that outlines the history of Asilomar and Holmes and what his experience was. And I encourage you if you want it. It's out on Amazon. You can buy it wherever you purchase books. You can order it from your local bookshop, etc. And what I want you to consider is that you can get the book, and in the book there is, in one particular year, 1958, he talks about a series of things that are all seemingly opposites. One of his talks was the time and the timeless. One is the absolute and the relative. One is the finite and the infinite. And he says that the whole week his talks were about things that appear as separate to us, but are really not. So a whole series of talks from that particular year are on this whole topic that we're talking about. Things that appear separate, but they're really all dependent upon or in relationship to one another. And so there's one particular article or one particular talk in that 1958 section where he talks about the finite and the infinite. You can see it's from Friday, August 15th of 1958. And I'd like to just share a couple of things from the book and see how it relates back to what we were hearing from the Science of Mind article. And let me just share a couple of quick quotes. And again, if this brings up anything from you that has a question, then I would love to hear that. And let's see, Linda says, I've been slowly moving through the Asilomar book. Yeah, slowly moving through it. I would agree. It's one of these books you can pick it up and just read any particular talk he does, and it's not easy. One of the things you have got to get down with is that these are transcripts of his talks, and like a lot of talk people who are doing lectures and things like that, even myself, probably in this particular morning, is you go off on tangents. You're going from A to B, and then you go over here and like squirrel for a little while, and then you come back. Because there's something in your consciousness. And so when you're reading Holmes in this book, you have to sort of follow his train of thought, which can be a little bit of a challenge. Mark up the book, highlight it, connect his thoughts. The other suggestion is read his talks for a year in sequence, because he does every year sort of have a theme and takes it from the beginning talk of that week to the end of that week. And so you can jump around from year to year, which is what I do. And I've read these so many times, but even for content in here, it's interesting. You can go to one talk and it stands alone, but I'd encourage you to look at a year. So I'm glad you're reading it, Linda, and I hope you're enjoying it. And I encourage others to get it. I think it's a wonderful compilation, even though I'm obviously I'm biased in that direction since I've spent so much time on it. In that book, and I'm actually reading from page 316 for just a moment, in that the Finite and the Infinite talk, Holmes writes, since the universe is indivisible, all of it is where you are. All of it is where I am, whether we know it or not. All of its creativity is at the center of our thinking. And this is why our thought is creative. We don't put it in, we take it out. Always, we take it out. We take everything out of life. We don't lay an egg. We don't make a garden. We set a hen and plant a garden. But we unite our personal equation with the universal principle. This is where he's getting into that. He's recognizing that the universe is indivisible, but we have this individual nature. That's the side of the physical, the material, the form, but it's also anchored within the universal principle of the all, or spirit. Okay. So as we unite our finite personalness is me as Mark, you as you, with an infinite, at first seemingly impersonal, but when we unite it consciously with something that contains the warmth and color of the universe, and it wrote every book that has ever been written and will write every book that will ever be written. What he's saying is that we need to connect ourselves with that infinite nature, but develop a sense of personalness with it. It's not some abstract idea that we just think of like, oh, over here is the spirit world and everything is all. And I understand that from an intellectual standpoint. We've got to develop a relationship with it. We've got to anchor that in a feeling within us. And the more we can develop that feeling, the more it becomes a reality for us. This is what Holmes is getting at. He goes on to say, there's only one author, there's only one singer, there's only one dancer. But you are that one. You say, how can I be that one? How can you help bring that one individualized as you? You and I have to be God's idea of himself as what we are. Emerson said, the simplest person who in his integrity worships God becomes God. He means the more we consciously unite with that which is the capital T truth, the more we unite with spirit and oneness, the greater receptivity to it, the larger opening to receive it, the more it flows through, the more power and truth, the beauty flow through us. But the wonder of it is, to me, that since no two of us are alike, we are individuals. Even the infinite will come to you and me in a different way than from everybody else. We're all tapping into the infinite, but the infinite is coming in a personalized nature or in an individualized way so that your life, your experiences, your calling, your divine urge to be whoever it is you are, to develop your gifts and talents to whoever you're called to be, is unique for you. It is unique for you. I'm flipping over to page 319, where Holmes talks about how do we do this? How do we develop that dynamic tension that allows us to connect to the infinite? Here's what he says. We begin by identification through contemplation to identify ourselves with that which is beyond us, which really is already within us, but hasn't come out of us in a kind of reflection. This is what's called mysticism. He's calling you to develop your mystical nature, where you call out and develop a relationship with something that's beyond you, but then to recognize it's already in you, like a mirror and a reflection. He adds, it's a feeling toward the universe. It is a spiritual sense of things, which do not deny or discount the physical. It doesn't say you haven't got a heart or lungs or a liver. It says if you have them, then why shouldn't they all work right? If they don't, we haven't returned to the divine pattern that sustains them. It is a system a little beyond meditation for things that make things happen. So yes, meditation is good. We need to develop a sense of a personal, emotional connection to that transcendent nature. We're coming into the final moments of our talk today. If there's any last minute questions, throw them in. Would love to hear any thoughts that you've got before we wind up. I do want to mention a couple of things with you. First off, thank you for being with me today. Thank you for leaving your comments. Again, the article we were exploring was The Finite and the Infinite by A. Graham Ikin from the February 63 issue of Science of Mind magazine. That if you want a copy of it, go to scienceofmindarchives.com and search for Science of Mind February 63. You will find it. If you're interested in my writings and my talks and my YouTube channel, all of that can be found through the website consciousbridge.com, and encourage you to check it out. Sign up for my newsletter, and periodically I send something out letting you know what I'm working on. Again, if you want anything from the archives, be sure to go scienceofmindarchives.com. There are tons and tons of resources that are available for you at the archives. And as always, if you enjoy the programming here on the New Thought Media Network, if you enjoy this Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series, I encourage you to donate to the New Thought Media Network through their website, www.ntmedia.org, and click on the link for donate and support the network and all the work that it's doing here to bring New Thought content to you. I hope that you've enjoyed today's program. I appreciate the comments and questions, and again, join us every Saturday on this program just to make sure that we are bringing to you things that you find interesting and exciting in the world of Science of Mind. Hopefully today's discussion regarding the finite and the infinite has been beneficial for you. And so be sure to hit like, be sure to share the video recording with your friends, let them know that this was beneficial for you and that you would like them to partake of that as well. So with all of that said, I just want to thank everybody for being with us today. I hope you've enjoyed today's session and that this will basically be, what is he saying? Just have a wonderful day. And they say I can't often multitask, and I've been doing such a good job of it all through this program. But I'm now coming to the end of the program where I have to flip back and find the right button. I have found it. So have a wonderful day. Find that beautiful dynamic tension in your lives where you live in connection with spirit and also in the world of form. Love and blessings to you always. Take care.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.